start with the first question. So in 90 seconds, please state your name, the office you're seeking, and then answer the following question. What do you think are the most important solutions at the congressional level to address sea level rise and flooding?
My name is George Buck. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
My name is George Buck. I'm running for the Congressional District in District 13, which is St. Petersburg all the way up to Union Street in Clearwater. I've been a resident for 25 years. One of the solutions that I think man has started creating a lot of the problems of sea rise, and it's going to be man that's going to solve them. Do I have all the answers? No. But I'm going to surround myself by a lot of people that do. I have a degree in emergency management. I've been all over the world, and I've been impacted by 2 tsunamis. I was one of the first 4 Americans in Banda Aceh after the tsunamis that hit the Indian Ocean. I managed the recovery operations for 230,000. I've been to Hurricane Francis. I've been to 48 different countries over the last 18 years in catastrophic disasters. Katrina. I know the impact of man-made. So what we have to do is we have to have man-made solutions. Like I said, I don't have all the solutions. I wish I did. If I did, you'd probably be going to church and worshiping me every weekend. So I'm open. We are creating. One thing I always teach when I was teaching at the USF Disaster Management was God made Florida a swamp. And then he brought hurricanes because hurricanes are big heat pumps. And then what does man do? We build on the swamp. And then we get upset at God. So now we need to start thinking about man-made solutions to assist God.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. When it comes to solutions, according to Flood IQ data, sea level rise plus a hurricane category 3 would cause flooding-related damage to 1.7 homes in Florida. What can we do now to protect these homes and these areas?
Well, unfortunately, it's very difficult for a lot of existing construction because some of the things, you know, when we go into disasters I've worked with after Katrina, they rise the houses up to a 13-foot FEMA flood programs. So we're trying to do that. But we have a lot of, Snell Isle has the most claims when it comes to flood insurance in the nation. And flood is the #1 killer in the world of natural disasters. So we have to either figure out an infrastructure, we have to figure out how we're going to drain the waters better, and we have to stop a lot of some introduced man-made hydrocarbons. We all know about that. And we also have nature-induced. Look what's going on in Kilauea in Hawaii. High sulfur gas is going into the environment. So that is some type of a greenhouse effect. So those are some of the solutions that we have to work for, we have to work with, and it's going to be an infrastructure and it's going to take time.
In order to work on those solutions, you're going to be faced with the question, where are you willing to use taxpayer dollars to deal with and fund sea level rise and resilience activities? What efforts, if any, would you champion in Congress to fund sea level rise and flooding resilience efforts?
We're going to take a common sense approach to analyzing research. I know that there's a lot on both sides that they can come out and give me 1,000 reports on man-made sea rise. Then there's another 1,000 reports that give me that it's not man-made. Personally, I do believe that man has introduced some type of impact to the environment. But we need to figure out a mechanism on how we can reduce that. I've been to Beijing 5 times over the last 10 years, and I've never seen the sun in Beijing. And I was sent there by the U.S. State Department to do an analysis and a vulnerability study of the Three Gorges Dam, which is the largest dam in the world. If it breached, how is that flooding going to impact Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam? So we went in there and we had to figure out, the Chinese just introduced a huge dam and a huge environmental problem. So we have to come up with environmental solutions, man-made solutions. Believe me, the water that is there is unbelievable. That's packed, and that's man-made hazards. So we need to see how we can reduce the vulnerability and risk assessments on man-made hazards. And yes, we do need to have financial support on both sides. Environment is not a partisan issue.
In representing our area, how would you deal with the following? In Pinellas County, we rely on surface and groundwater reservoirs for drinking water. How do you plan to protect these reservoirs against saltwater intrusion as a result of sea level rise?
we have to be more conservative with our water. However, one of the things that really upsets me right now is the studies that I've seen and the reports that I've seen that we're actually pumping in sewer water into our aquifer. Has anybody else heard about that? Okay? That is so troubling to me. I have a 21-year-old daughter at USF St. Pete studying to be a teacher. And I don't want her to have this polluted water, and I don't want my grandchildren, she's only 21, so I don't want a whole lot. So I don't want them yet. So, but I don't want my great-grandchildren. So one of the first things I'm going to do, I'm going to go up to, when I go to Congress, I'm going to go to the EPA director, and I'm going to send some EPA officials to come down here and say, you better give us some answers why this is happening, because it's not being enforced at the local, state, and federal, or even the federal level. And I'm going up to St. Pete because this is my home. I've been here for 25 years. That's got to stop.
As sea levels rise and coastal Floridians are displaced from their homes, there's a potential for large numbers of climate refugees to migrate to different areas of the state. How do you propose the state prepare for this potential shift in population?
Unfortunately, a lot of people like to come to Florida. So it's going to be very difficult to convince them to move to Colorado, high up in the mountains. So how we're going to be dealing with the shift? It's going to be the coastal is going to be impacted the worst. And what's the economy of Florida? One of the biggest economies is tourism. So where do people want to come? It's just like when you live in Colorado. You want to have a fire in a nice warm place while you're watching people ski. I used to live in Colorado, so I know what it's like. So people want to come here to be on the ocean. So we have to do everything we can to either shore up, replenish, and keep the environment safe. And it has to start with ourselves. It has to start with the water, the drinking water, and it has to start with keeping the environment safe here because we want people to come here. We had a big impact when it came to BP. And that was a horrible experience. So we have to start figuring out better technology to cap those things off. The reality is we're not getting off of hydrocarbons tomorrow. So we have to figure out how better and safely to extract them in the earth until we can figure out how to store the energy of renewable energy. That's our problem, is the storage of renewable energy.
And on the topic of people being affected by sea level rise, low-income residents are frequently disproportionately affected by hurricanes. How can Congress address recovery assistance to low-income residents?
I worked Hurricane Katrina. One of the problems when it comes to low income, a lot of times, I actually went to the 9th Ward. That was the part where the barge hit the dike, the levees, and the water flooded. The entire community was wiped out. So FEMA went in there, and all the residents were upset who were low income, and they were upset because FEMA wouldn't come back and rebuild it. But the problem is we have a lot of our low income people are renters, and FEMA does not help renters rebuild. So we have to come up with some system of maybe empowering people to become homeowners again. And then once they become a homeowner, then we can better protect them. But the government is not going to pay for renters and for the other person, the landlord, to make money on the disaster. So we've got to figure out some solutions that way. I don't have all the answers right now, and I'm going to be the first to say that, and I don't think anybody in this room has all of them. But when I get up to Congress, I'm going to be circling myself and around a whole lot of smart people, a lot smarter than I am.
You talked a little bit about some of the solutions that you believe are necessary, but would you be willing to champion any of the following in Congress? International agreements, carbon fee and dividends, innovation, technology incentives, or any other measures? Research
is number one. We've got to start the research. I'm going to champion, I want to make Pinellas County the research hub to becoming energy storage. Because what we know how to do is we know how to do windmills, we know how to do solar energy, but when the sun goes down and the wind cuts down, we don't know how to store it. Batteries are not the answer right now. That's why the Volt only gets 20 miles. And batteries, they're full of polycarbonate, they have lead inside of them, they have acids. It's very dangerous to the environment. So what we have to start doing is looking into alternate ways of storage. What is that? I have no idea. Right now we do batteries. Maybe it could be a geothermal, maybe it could be some type of energy storage. So we have to work on that. We have to look at new technologies to store the energy, because we're doing a good job on producing it. We're not doing it enough. I'm sorry, what was the other part?
Well, we talked about international agreements, carbon fee and dividends, innovation, technology incentives.
Under the international agreements, one of the things that I see is, I've been to Mumbai in India on disasters. The environment is horrible over there. Anybody heard of Masoot oil? Masoot is the lowest and dirtiest oil. You can't burn it to power plant in the United States, but China and India import it, and that's all they burn. That's contributing to our global sea rise. So we've got to deal with not only our country, because we are working on better technology. Time's up. Here comes the bell. Go Rays.
All right, let's turn for a moment to plastic pollution. Decades of plastic pollution has been building up in our oceans and our beaches. What policy positions are you interested in seeing implemented to deal with this issue?
Research on biodegradable plastics. Right? We're not going to get rid of plastics. You ever go to an emergency room, you go to the dentist, everything's plastic. So we need to come up with a biodegradable type of plastic, something that dissolves, or we need to come up with a better plastic technology. I really feel that we as Americans have the technology and the will that we can do this. We just have to have the right incentives. It can't be radical incentives. It's got to be a systems approach. It's got to be an analyst approach. And I think that we should try to stop all this, because I don't drink coffee, I drink Diet Pepsi. So they come in wrapped up in those little plastic things, and I hate it. You know, why can't it come in a little cardboard box or something like that? Because it's not efficient. So we have to come up with a better system to make disposable plastics or biodegradable plastics that don't impact the environment. California just banned straws. That's a start. Okay, but let's look at the reality of it. You're not going to ban all these straws. We have to do this in a process of the whole problem, not just straws. Let's just look at everything. Water bottles. There isn't a person in here that doesn't use a water bottle. And they're all, oh, you don't? Okay, well, okay. I feel bad because I do water bottles, so you are better than I am. Thank you.
I want to remind the audience, if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring over an index card so that we can ask them for you. Mr. Buck, I would like to ask you, it seems like the majority of the funding from the federal government can only be spent after an area is hit by a disaster. What can we do? What are you willing to do to change these policies to encourage more spending to mitigate pre-disaster when it comes to FEMA funding or Stafford Act funding? How would you do that?
The Stafford Act was enacted in 1950 by the United States under the Department of Commerce, and in the late 70s, FEMA came into operations. This is my field. I was an air rescue firefighter in the Army. I was a full-time firefighter, and I achieved a degree in emergency management, and I was teaching graduate-level emergency management degree programs over at USF for many years. So I am very familiar with this. The United States, and as a society, you included, we are all reactive type people. We need to be proactive type people. So we need to change the Stafford Act, and we need to start more investment. It's called mitigation. There's 4 phases of a disaster: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We need to enhance the mitigation of it, and the definition of mitigation is to stop a disaster or prevent the impact on our society or lessen the impact on our society. We're not going to stop a hurricane, but we need to do everything we can to mitigate it so it has less of an impact. That's through technology, it's through research, and that's through funding that I'm going to provide to Pinellas County.
And here's our first audience question. It goes like this. Would you support a federal or a state carbon offset market, like that in California, to pay sustainable farmers who fix carbon in living soils or land trusts that protect trees as carbon stores?
I'm not 100% sure. Who asked the question?
I asked that question.
Could you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, California has a carbon market. They're one of the states that's pioneering this work, and they currently provide the polluters pay a carbon tax. And that
okay, a carbon tax. I'm sorry. Yes.
Paying those who are protecting trees, like the land trust, or farmers
Right.
who are
I see what you're saying now.
One of the best things we have is living soils, so farmers
Okay.
who are using regenerative
Yes.
methods.
Yeah, I do agree that we should give people rewards for doing very positive things. But there are some times you can't punish everybody for using a car or using carbon because of the way the world is. So I would definitely, I would rather reward people. I really do want to, because I think that's going to be the incentive to get them to do it instead of punishing them, and then they start rebelling against you. That's kind of the way I feel. I may not have the best answer for that, and that's something I do need to research a little bit more, but I do believe in reward systems instead of the punishment systems, because you can destroy small businesses, you can destroy entrepreneurship that would create a capitalistic society, so we can develop better research to delete and eliminate some of the pollution that they're giving out.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left with you. If any other audience members have any questions, please let us know. I'm going to ask one more from our list. What are your plans for developing collaborations between municipalities so that areas where budgets are high and areas where budgets are low can collaborate to enjoy mutual development?
Unfortunately, we have societies and we have cities that are better off. Bel Air Bluff has a lot of higher tax base compared to parts of St. Petersburg. So what we need to do is collaborate them, not only make it money, make it about incentive and progress and programs and supporting that so that people can get out there and do it. You're the solutions. And I'm just going to give you the avenue to get those solutions done. Like I said, I don't have all the answers, and I want to bring you into my world so I can get all the answers. If you want to learn how to respond to a disaster, I'm your guy. I mean, I can even go into burning buildings for you. I'm getting too old for that, but I can go into a burning building and help you. But we need to collaborate because I don't have all the solutions. We all have the solutions. And one of the big things I want to stop is the pumping of sewage into the aquifer. I'm sorry I harp on that, but I'm very upset about that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buck. If we have one more audience question, we can take that if it's for Mr. Buck. If not, we can go on.
Yes, early in your talk, you talked about the scientific information concerning climate reality, changes in our climate. And you say 1,000 positions on this and 1,000 positions on that. It's 97,000 on this and 3,000 on this. It's not a balance, it's not an even off. There's definite consent throughout the scientific community that carbon pollution and other carbon dioxide particularly are a major cause of the changes in climate we're experiencing at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard the opposite, but I do believe that man has introduced some problems, but it is also, we have to look at the natural occurrence of it.
I do understand science. I have a PhD in chemistry.
Okay. Well, thank you. But I'm just saying, if I go to Washington, I'm going to get as many oppositions as I'm going to get positive stuff.
Not in the scientific literature.
Okay, well, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be open-minded. But what is the solution that you would introduce? You've recognized the problem, so what are some of the solutions you would introduce to me?
Reduce the amount of carbon dioxide being entered into the atmosphere.
Okay, so how do we eliminate that?
We reduce the consumption of,
Exactly.
We use solar energy, we get rid of coal plants, we get rid of waste of things we can do.
Can we store enough energy from
Thank you so much for the
solar?
question. We're going to move on to the last question from the audience just because we're a little bit short on time.
I'd love to talk to you afterwards.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm reading this, but I think it says, how does permeable surface impact sea level rise? How can government address this?
The problem, again, we're melting the caps. I understand that, and I'm not 100% sure on this subject. I will admit when I don't know an answer. Okay, so what we have to do is we've got to bring all the scientific research in. I have to read on it, and I've got to come up with solutions from you so I can fund it. And we have to get new policies in there. The environmental policies in the United States are so outdated; they need to be updated, and we need people like you. And when I become a congressman, you're going to be the first one I'm going to be calling. So I would love for you if you would sit down with me.
And
I will
last-
give you my card.
I apologize. Last audience question, someone asked, have you taken or will you take the fossil-free pledge, which is the following: I pledge to not take contributions from the oil, gas, and coal industry and instead prioritize the health of our families, climate, and democracy over fossil fuel interests.
Yes, because none of them have given me money. So I'm going to continue with that. And I don't think they'll be knocking on my door because I'm not a big fossil fuel. I'm more into the environment. I truly am. Yes, I do have a car, and yes, I am in an air-conditioned house, but I would like to see that changed in the very near future, hopefully in my lifetime, and I'm old.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buck.
Thank you.
An applause for Mr. Buck, please.